Have you ever wanted to start a coding project and wondered, what kind of project structure should I use? Well, today, in this video, I'm going to go over some of the common project structures I see and how some of them, while they might not necessarily be wrong, can make navigating a code base, particularly in a larger project, quite difficult. Then, I'm going to go over project structures I'd recommend that can hopefully help you and maybe the team you might be working with. Coming up. Welcome to the first video for Gotta Be Geek. My name is Mike, and in this channel, I'm going to be talking about coding, software development, dev tools, and other tech-related stuff. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell icon so you can get notified when I drop the next video. Now that that's out of the way, when we talk about project structures, there's a lot that goes into that. The question becomes, is it a front-end web application? Maybe it's React or .NET Core? Is it a back-end web API? Or is it a library that you plan on publishing somewhere like GitHub for people to use? Well, because there's so many different options, I'm going to break this video down into sections, and in the description below, you're going to see the different times for the different sections, and you can skip forward to one of them that might be a little bit more relevant for you. Alright, before we get into the examples, I want to go over the 4 guidelines that I try to follow when I structure my projects. These guidelines come from an acronym known as LIFT, L-I-F-T. These guidelines were created by a developer advocate for Microsoft by the name of John Papa. And while these guidelines were created with front-end applications in mind, particularly Angular applications, I believe these guidelines can be followed for any project structure. The first guideline in LIFT is L, locate our code easily. So when we talk about locating our code easily, we want to be able to go to our repository or wherever our code is being stored, and we want to be able to find different elements or different parts of our project easily without any problem. So if I have a particular part of the project I want to work on, say I need to work on some feedback section in our web application, I want to be able to go find that section easily and understand the folder structure and where things are located without any problem. The second guideline in LIFT is I, for identify code at a glance. This means when we're looking at files, we want to be able to distinguish by the name what that file most likely is or what's contained in that file. So for an example, if we have a class in a file, we want to name the file that class. And in some cases, we may have multiple classes or interface or objects in a file, but in most cases, if we can prevent it, we want to try and keep one per file. The third guideline in LIFT is flat structure as long as we can. This means that we don't want to unnecessarily nest things in multiple folders if we can avoid it. We want to try and keep things as elevated as possible and reduce folder structure until it makes sense to segregate things or group things together in an intuitive way. The fourth guideline in LIFT is T, try to stay dry or don't repeat yourself, or T-dry. This means that we want to try and prevent unnecessary naming conventions that repeat ourselves or that are obvious in another case. So as an example, I don't want to create a about-view.html file because it's an HTML file, so it's already kind of obvious that it's a view file. So in this case, I would just call the file about.html. Now that we've gone through these guidelines, we're going to go through some of the examples that I've set aside. Some of these examples are going to be examples where navigating the project structure might be a little bit more difficult, and then we're going to go through some of the examples of what it would look like if we try to follow these guidelines and restructure our project in a way that would be a little bit more helpful and make navigating our code base a bit easier. First up, we're going to take a look at a front-end web application that uses a React framework. So as we can see through the example here, I've created a kind of small starter application that has just a few different pieces to it, so we can illustrate what it looks like when we separate things out into a folder structure that follows what a lot of templates today would use if you were to use a starter template. And so in this case, we can see that things are broken out into kind of what they are. In this case, reducers, components, containers, and so on and so forth. So as we can see, it's not very hard to find the different sections when it's small like this if I needed to work on a specific portion of this web application. But as the project goes larger, if we take a look at an example like this one, you can see that now I've got all these folders expanded out, and if I needed to work on a particular portion of the application and I wasn't quite sure, maybe there was a bug and I wasn't quite sure where that bug might be, but I knew it had to do with feedback, and I need to look at all the different feedback related things, then I need to look at all these folders and find the different files that have something to do with feedback. So in this case, it makes it kind of hard to navigate it, or if I knew I needed to add something to a particular feature in the application, it's kind of hard to navigate and find the different things. So we're not following our principle or guidelines very well in this case, because we're already struggling at the locating our files or code easily portion. So then we'll move on to what it looks like when we move this over into a larger project following our guidelines using the feature-based project structure, where we separate things more about what they're about than what they are. And so, and you can see in this case, we've moved to-dos, feedback, settings into their own folders, making it so that when we want to work on a specific portion of our front-end web application, it's really easy to find the different elements that have to do with it and then make any changes or modifications that we want to. Next up, we're going to talk about a library project. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find any examples of people creating really big projects with a bad folder structure, so we're just going to look at some examples here that are good examples. And so in this first one, you can see I've created a small project that kind of showcases how I would break things out, and it's not very big, so we can't see any challenges really with finding things. And this is just a good showcase for what you might want to start with as you're expanding a project or a library that you might want to start. Now, as another example, just so we can see something that's been around a bit longer where the project has grown a bit bigger, this is Ninject, a dependency injection library on GitHub. You can certainly take a look at it. I'll have a link for it below. And here you can see how they've broken things out. They've got the folder structure. It's all set up where it's pretty intuitive to go and find the different sections of the library if you needed to work on or fix or make a suggestion on a particular portion of their library. Lastly, we're going to look at a .NET Core web application. So first I'm going to show you this example here, which is actually an example I've seen myself many times, and there's nothing wrong with this one again if the project is smaller, and it does make sense in some ways to break the project up in this way, but it can get, again, difficult to navigate when the project starts to grow larger. And so what we want to do is take an example like this, which is again fine when it's small, but we're then going to shift it to an example like this one. So now you can see we've broken the same thing out. It hasn't really gotten bigger, but we can see that it's similar to the front-end web application. The way things are broken down into their folders or projects in this case that are the different portions. So now you can see I've created a to-dos project that has everything related to to-dos. And then if I needed to add maybe a feedback section of the API, or I needed to add a settings or whatever we wanted to make, I could add another project to kind of segregate everything for that part of the project or that part of the API, and then it makes it easy again to find everything. So we follow all of our guidelines, it's easy to locate files, it's intuitive, and we're not really repeating ourselves, and we also are easily able to figure out what each thing is. Well, hopefully going over some of these project structures have helped you decide how you're going to start your next coding project. And if you like the content, make sure you drop a like below so that I know to keep making more videos like this for you guys in the future. I've got a pretty good lineup of content for this channel already, but I'm happy to take suggestions. So if you have a suggestion, drop it in the comment section below or vote on it that you might see already. I'll see you guys in the next one.